Hey, Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Steve, and good morning, everybody, for the 17th edition of our virtual Mayor's Breakfast. And again, a shout out to Steve Spedowfski, our Deputy City Manager, for putting all this together every week for us and quarterbacking this. Welcome, everybody. Today's breakfast is going to be dedicated to disaster preparedness in general. We had a special edition last week with Captain Denton on and also with Chief Myers. And we talked specifically about the district and the city's response to the fires that were occurring here in the Bay Area, in particular, how we as a community were trying to make sure that we were protecting our community and what they were doing elsewhere in the state. And I want to thank both of them for participating on that special edition. A lot of folks really appreciated hearing that update. So today is more broad-based. And we have, in addition to Captain Denton and of course, Chief Myers, we have our county supervisor, Candace Andersen, who's been with us all 17 mornings, and thank you, Candace. We have Dr. Joseph, who at the end will talk about an update on COVID, and he has been given carte blanche every week to talk about this pandemic and to share with us information as he chooses, and I really appreciate him giving us the latest update. Of course, Joe Gorton, our city manager, is with us every week, and he'll give an update on the city stuff. And another special guest today is Danielle Bell. And Danielle has been perhaps the most intricate part of our disaster preparedness for at least the last 12 to 13 years. Am I underestimating the number of years you've been coordinating this?
It's about right.
It's about right. And she really quarterbacks everything from the CERT class. I'll let her share that, but she does a wonderful job. So to start off today, I want to introduce Joe Gorton, our city manager, and he can talk about the latest update here in the cities.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good morning. I don't want to take too much time as usual to get to our important guests. The city is continuing to adjust as these new orders and regulations come out, and we continue to adjust to the newly established state regulations, which I believe Supervisor Andersen will probably touch on. So I will at least I hope you will touch on it in connection with what the county is doing as well. The city's programs have been pretty successful throughout the COVID period, staying in compliance with the orders, but also giving some outlets to some of our youth. And we have also a program that allows our staff members to have their kids attend in small pods school now that we're dealing with online schools. So all these things are continuing to move forward successfully, and we're hopeful that we'll get to a point where we can even do more. So with that being said, I'll obviously be on till the end and happy to answer any city related questions.
Thank you, Joe. Candace Andersen, you've been so gracious to get up almost every Friday morning to join us, especially after last night's late mayor's conference that you were, I think, one of the main guest speakers and watched and listened to what you were talking about. Can you give us what's the latest update here you're on mute, by the way. Give us the latest update on what's going on in the county and how it affects our businesses and our residents.
I would be happy to, and good morning, Bill, and to the rest of the panel. Again, like I did 2 weeks ago, I want to thank our firefighters and today for what they have done as we've gone through this major wildfire crisis. We've got Chief Meyer here today, who is outstanding fire chief for the San Ramon Valley and keeps me well apprised of what is happening. And you also will get to hear from one of my favorite people in the world, who is Danielle Bell, who has done more than anyone else to really get us prepared in the San Ramon Valley for any kind of a disaster. So I look forward to hearing from them. But as always, I love to start with the numbers. And so we're seeing a hint of improvement. And this is a good sign from what we went through in June, where early June, we were flat, we had low numbers, we had a whole roadmap to reopening to where we are today, which, for a while, as I called it, we were kind of in doldrums. We didn't know when we were going to move. So we are still seeing, uptick in numbers. I bet it's at a slower pace. It's not quite as quickly. When I was here a few weeks ago, we were about 12,046 cases in Contra Costa County. Today we're at 14,212 cases, slightly less of a jump than we saw a few weeks ago. Yesterday, we had only 68 new cases in Contra Costa County with a 14-day average of about 110. 2 weeks ago, we were averaging 208 new cases. So again, a great decline. Data issues with the state are now resolved. The CalReady system was appropriately updated. We're good with that. And so we can really see what our case positive rate is, which is really the more significant data point rather than just the number of cases we have, because of course, as you test more, you're going to find more cases. And so it's San Ramon. It's still spreading. When I was here 2 weeks ago, you had 233 cases. You're now up to 281 coronavirus cases. So you've had 47 new cases, which was about the same increase we saw. Good news for testing, and you still can get tested on demand if you have any reason to believe that you've been exposed, if you have any symptoms, of course, but even if you just want that assurance, you can get tested at any one of our test sites. Our test turnaround is now down to 2 to 3 days. As I mentioned several weeks ago, the Board of Supervisors was entering into additional contracts with labs, so we really could see those turnaround times change quickly. We needed that data, otherwise our contact tracing is entirely irrelevant. Hospitalizations to me has always been one of the most important numbers, because that's really why we did our first shelter in place. We needed to flatten the curve to ensure that we had hospital capacity, that people were not going to unnecessarily die because they could not receive treatment in a hospital when their condition got to that level. And so right now we're down to averaging 89 cases in the hospital. Today we're actually at 76. So 89 is a 7-day average. 2 weeks ago, we were at 97. And as we reached a peak in August, we were over 110 cases in the hospital. Some days we were down to only 20% capacity in our ICU, which is not just COVID patients in the ICU, but all patients. Nevertheless, we want to have that larger capacity. Now, since we last met, we have had 25 more deaths in Contra Costa County. And any of you reading the paper today, you can read it tomorrow too. Alameda County today, announced additional deaths. They are seeing that spike. And of course, that happens a few weeks after hospitalizations. So we've had 25 deaths. But as I've mentioned the last 2 times I've been here, we are seeing the trend that far fewer of those deaths are taking place in long-term care facilities, but in the general population, in the community. And so of our 12 individuals 12 of the 25 who passed away in actually just the last week, I'm looking at 15 deaths in just the last week, 80% of those, 12 of 15 deaths were in the community. Only 3 or 20% of the deaths in the last week of 15 we had in this last week were in long-term care facilities. Also disturbing that we're seeing more younger people dying, and I'm not talking about under the age of 30. That still is one of our largest demographics where we're seeing the spike in cases, but we're seeing more people in our 41 to 50 year group. We've had 5 people now die. And so that's unfortunate. 15 people have now died in our 51 to 60 age group, 28 people in our 61 to 70, and the rest have been older than 71. So we continue to encourage you to do the testing, but let's talk about some of the big changes we've seen. So directly impacting us in Contra Costa County, as of Monday, you could go indoors to get your hair cut. I'm looking forward to doing that in a couple of weeks. No sneaking in the back door of a salon for anyone in Contra Costa County. So we're excited to have those open. You're still not allowed to have services involving the face. So if you have a beautiful beard that you want trimmed, you're going to have to wait to have that professionally done. Indoor shopping malls are open at 25% capacity, and you can't have food courts or other gathering spaces open, and outdoor gyms are allowed. And so biggest news really though beyond that is that we do have a whole new state process for how we are evaluating reopening. We've gotten off the state watch list, we've gotten off of those conditional waivers that each county could get, and we've got this colored tiered system. And so he has a great website, the Blueprint for a Safer Economy, which I'm sure San Ramon has a direct link to on their homepage, because I know Steve Spedowfski is so good at taking care of that. But essentially it allows you to really gauge where you are as a county, but doesn't have you moving that quickly. And so most counties in California, including us, are at the top, more serious tier, in the purple tier. And counties in this tier, we have at least 8%, we have more than 8% positive cases, although for us, we're at 6.2% positive cases. So that helps us. But so we could move to the red if we were just looking at the positivity, but they also have 7 or more new daily cases per 100,000. And so for Contra Costa County, that equates based on our population to about 80 new cases a day. Currently, we're averaging a little bit more than that. We're averaging, as of last week, when they first started this tiered system, we were averaging 160 cases a day. We are seeing that decline, as I mentioned. Now, the rules are that you have to stay in your colored tier for at least 3 weeks, and you can't move until every 3 weeks. And you have to have moved into the requirements for the next tier down, the red tier, for at least 2 weeks. And if you've been in that category for 2 weeks, then you will be allowed to move forward. On the trend we're going, we're really hopeful that end of September, October, we are going to be able to move into that tier level, move into the red, because that does allow us to open up our schools for in-person education. Of course, there's still requirements that need to be followed, but nevertheless, it's important to do that. We are, though, still processing waivers for elementary schools. 4 of those have already been approved. And so those schools, right now it's primarily private schools, are being able to open because they can meet these very high threshold for reopening. We have many more that are in the pipeline that are being reviewed right now. And my main message today really is, be careful this weekend. On Labor Day weekend, just as we saw with Memorial Day weekend, the 4th of July, the tendency is to gather in large, gathering backyard barbecues with your friends and family, sharing food and all the rest. Don't do it. We really want to continue on the path we're going. If you do feel the need to gather, wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, don't share food or utensils. Just use this Labor Day as an opportunity to quietly enjoy the holiday and really look at it as a pathway forward that hopefully we're really on a great path to put this behind us. And hopefully, as we keep hearing encouraging signs about a vaccine that's just around the corner, whether it be at the end of this year or early next year, and we can go back to a completely different normal than we've experienced before. So thank you so much. Bill, now you're muted.
Thank you, Candace.
No.
I tried to be muted while you talk so my coughs wouldn't bother you. To sort of summarize again, all the agencies here in the Valley, the city of San Ramon, town of Danville, the fire department, the schools, the county, we all work together under one umbrella in terms of disaster preparedness. And we've agreed up front, by the way, that the fire department would be the lead agency. If a disaster was to strike, so we have one place that would actually be the nerve center of handling this. And I'm so appreciative that the chief would join us today. And I'm gonna let him introduce Danielle and the role she plays. And so Chief, I'm gonna pass the ball over to you. And again, thank you for being here, sir.
Okay, can you hear me? I just unmuted.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. No, I appreciate it, Mayor. Great job, Supervisor Andersen. It's fun to come to these breakfasts and listen to other folks. And Supervisor Andersen has been a great partner. So I just wanted to mention that, especially with COVID, which we're all dealing with on the front lines. So appreciate her and her hard work. Appreciate you for having me. We're excited to be here. I have Danielle Bell, one of our rock stars, as you know, and most of the community probably knows her. So for us, it's always an opportunity to get the word out as to how to prepare yourself for disasters, man-made, natural, and now obviously the pandemic. So it gives us a chance to really communicate to our community and tell them what they need to do to be prepared. So I'm excited for Danielle Bell to be here. I don't know if we have an ability to put up one of our slides. I don't know if Steve's going to do that or if Danielle's going to do it. Oh, Danielle's going to do it. Is that you, Danielle? It's got to be. But we wanted to put up a quick slide as we start here. I wanted to start with a couple things about disaster preparedness for the group and for our community. What you have in front of you is, and you're going to hear Denton Carlson, a great partner of ours, talk about communication. But for us, a big way to communicate some of the things that we have in place that help the community out is our website. First and foremost, you can click on our website and get information. We typically, when there's an emergency or a disaster or anything that is pressing, we feel is very important. On that website, when you click on our website, you'll have a banner on the top, a red banner that will tell you the latest information that we have, which we think is very important. And as you can see from this, what I wanted to emphasize from a preparedness standpoint is a couple things that are on this slide. First and foremost, you have the fire evacuation plans. One of the things that we have done in all of our communities we protect is we've looked at the high hazard areas, and specific to the city of San Ramon, we have an area of Dormitory Valley, and we also have the west side of San Ramon, which is over where my office is, that we see as two areas that concern us. And what we did was, on this website, if you click on this link, what I think we call a hyperlink nowadays, you can go directly to all the plans. They're in alphabetical order, and you can go down and take a look at your area. And typically, we'll show you first, it'll show you ready, set, go, what you can do to be prepared. Checklists if you have a wildland fire coming towards you, or some natural disaster that's happening, you can get prepared. And specific to fire, we have a whole list of things that you can go through here. So that's the first thing you'll see. And then you'll actually see major arteries. And I'm just going to emphasize something that I think is important. We've talked to the police department about. The police department will decide when capable and when able, they'll decide the evacuation points and the arteries that we want the community to use. But these arteries that we show here are really guidelines. And if for some reason wildland fire is bearing down on you and you have to make a decision, what you can do is you can take a look at these arteries, and if you have to leave, you have to leave. That can happen, and we've seen that quite often. But it also gives you a checklist in here as to what happens if you happen to be trapped. So I think it's good information, especially given what we've seen, 1 million acres burned in the last 2 weeks, that we are prepared in the valley and specifically to the city of San Ramon. As you look at this a little bit further, Pulse Point, I know the community, most of the community knows about Pulse Point. It's another great informational tool. It's free. If you need to get on there and you hear a siren go by, you can actually click if you're in the city of San Ramon, and you can get an idea of what's happening, whether it's a medical call, a fire, or an accident, or other things. It's not going to give you specific addresses necessarily, but it'll definitely give you some information that I think is important, and also has been used by us to get information out. We have a great partnership. It was Pulse Point was started right here in the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District. And so for us, it's a great tool that we can continue to use and educate and inform our public. And then finally, we know that everybody has different kinds of ways that they get their information. We work with the police department, the city, to make sure that we have consistent communication, but we try to put it out the best way we can to everybody through those mediums, those social media mediums. So enough of that, because that was the boring part. Now the exciting part for everybody. Again, the star of the show, Danielle Bell, who I'll just say is our Community Emergency Response Team Coordinator. I think she's upwards near 1,500 CERT graduates, 1,300 to 1,500 graduates. does a great job. She's got an amazing way about her, and she's got a lot of great information. And I just will segue to her at this. There's only so much we can do. We have 45 firefighters a day. So when you listen to Danielle Bell, what I want the community to remember is you have to make sure that you can take care of yourself in those first 7 to 10 days, really. Used to be 72 hours, and we keep pushing it out as we deal with these emergencies. And Danielle helps you to get there and able to take care of yourselves and your neighbors. So I'm gonna turn it over to Danielle, who's gonna give you a lot of great information. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Chief. And thanks everybody who is here. It's great to be in partnership and be together. And it's an honor to be here this morning. So thanks for having me, Mayor. As Chief said, the CERT program, which stands for Community Emergency Response Team, is such a valuable way to get prepared in our community. As you know, most local governments prepare for everyday emergencies, but in a disaster, as the Chief mentioned, the number of scope of incidents can overwhelm the conventional emergency system, as we've seen with fires. The CERT teams is an all risk, all hazard training. It's a valuable course, and it's designed to protect yourself, your family, your neighbors, and your neighborhood in an emergency situation. CERT, it's positive and it's a realistic approach to emergency and disaster situations where citizens like you may initially be on their own. And as Chief said, 7 to 10 days, but it could be a lot longer depending on the emergency. And all of your actions make a difference. So why people will respond to others in need without the training? Oh, friend. One goal of the CERT program is to help them to be effective and efficiently without placing themselves in unnecessary danger. So the CERT program goes through different modalities of putting out small fires, treating 3 medical killers that we talk about often: opening airways, controlling bleeding, treating shock, providing just basic medical care. And we go over search and rescue and how to organize yourselves as a team. So we actually have CERT areas throughout the district for where people live according to our fire stations. And then you kind of learn how to gather disaster intelligence and support the first responders out there during a disaster. The course is approximately 20 hours and is generally spread over a weekend because that's what has worked for most of our community. There is that feeling sometimes when you list all this of I can't do this or it's going to be overwhelming, but truly there's a place for everybody in CERT. So the why behind CERT, it's like paying for car insurance. You might never ever need it, yet you hope not to, but the occasion arises, and having the CERT training, just like having car insurance, means you're as ready as you can to help yourself, your family, and your neighborhood. So that's why we really encourage people to take it. It can also be a wonderful way to give back to your community and for some other emergencies around the nation if you get deployed. One of the recent highlights for CERT is this SCU fire. Numerous amount of CERT programs around the area got to report at CAL FIRE Base Camp 6, located in Pleasanton. Some people saw the news about that. And their tasks were to bring up the call center and some other miscellaneous activities. But the CERT programs from all over the Bay Area reported in, and we logged in over 3,500 hours. And 2 nights ago at the Alameda County Fairgrounds, the CAL FIRE incident commander brought the CERT members together and spoke just of the gratitude and awe, how smooth the call center ran. It's the first all volunteer led call center. And he had said in his statement that it could be a model for the state or even the nation. So it was a great way for CERT to come in and be an integral part of the response. CERT members were perfect for the call center. And the odds and ends of helping out they were needed at base camp. So it's really a great program to get involved with, and I highly recommend it for anybody in our community.
Danielle, thank you so much. How many teams are there in the San Ramon area? Do you know?
So we have 10 teams. The focus is really around our stations. So we have stations in San Ramon. So we have 10 stations. So they're coordinating to we have station 30 in Windermere, 31 in Danville. So we coordinate our CERT teams around those boundaries.
And given the COVID and people not being able to attend classes, when do you envision us being able to resume CERT training? Because I can't tell you how important this program is. And having nearly 600 to 800 San Ramon residents who've gone through the training and are going to be invaluable if ever disaster strikes, when do you think we can resume training?
So currently we're doing some monthly trainings for our CERT members, and we're looking at an online version, sign of the times, but something that we can release next year so that we can still have people go through the program. There is an all hands on deck disaster drill at the end that we'll have to bring people together once the timing is right, but we're formatting what we can do in the meantime to get people through the program and kind of have a weekly check-in with me and be part of the program to learn all the skills, and then we'll bring them all together once we can be in person.
Are you looking for residents who have any particular critical skills, such as helm operators, physicians, people with other kinds of critical skills? Are there people who might reach out to you who have those skills?
I think the broad sense, as I said earlier, it is really a place for everybody, from somebody who has great handwriting that can be our scribe and take notes and set up an instant command system, to someone who does have really great radio skills or wants to learn radio skills and be that connection point for us at the Emergency Operations Center. Nurses, doctors, I mean, we have such a wonderful community and array of people that in their work life maybe do one thing and in a volunteer capacity do another. I know even at base camp, we had a couple nurses that were able to kind of do other things while they were there and get sworn in that way. So it really is a collective of bringing everybody's talents into one program.
And Danielle, how would people reach you if they want more information?
You can go right to the website under the CERT program, and the email is there. And I think that would probably be the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Look forward to, there may be some questions for you at the end.
Absolutely.
I'm going to transition over now to Denton Carlson, who is probably the lead city person when it comes to interacting with our CERT program, disaster preparedness. Captain, good to have you here.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and I appreciate the invitation today. As you well know, I'm always interested in talking about communicating with the public and making sure the information gets out there. And of course, you know, today is about as timely as you can get to have this type of topic. As everyone here knows, September is Emergency and Disaster Preparedness Month. So getting the information out and making sure people are ready is a key this month, and it allows us to really focus on it. Obviously, it's at the forefront of all of our minds because of everything that's been going on over the past several weeks, specifically in our area with the wildfires. But again, it's just an opportunity to get the information out there. So one of the things that we focus on at the San Ramon Police Department is communication with the public. That's the key when it comes to an emergency situation or a critical incident, whatever it may be. And we've created a platform through numerous different avenues to make sure the information that we get out there reaches as many people as possible right at the onset of an emergency. So as Stephen just put up on the screen, these are a bunch of the platforms that we utilize to make sure that the information is out there. We have our emergency text messaging through Everbridge and Nixle, where we will send out emergency information immediately. To sign up for that, it's as simple as texting your San Ramon zip code to 888-777. You'll be automatically enrolled with your cell phone number. You can go to nixle.com and register that way. We're now over 25,000 people who've registered for our emergency text alerts, which is fantastic. And again, the goal with this is when we need it, to be able to reach people as quickly as possible with the pertinent information. If something does happen in San Ramon and we need to inform the public immediately of what's going on, our initial response will be to get everything out on every single platform we have. And you can see on the screen our social media feeds for the San Ramon Police Department. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Nextdoor. We have the capacity to do reverse landline calling throughout the city of San Ramon. We update that on a yearly basis to ensure we can have everyone reached if they need to. We also have the text and email updates for emergency situations through the city of San Ramon, and you can register for those through our Gov delivery program at sanramon.ca.gov. We also have a great partnership with the county through the community warning system. This is a system that you will see every once in a while that'll pop up on your TV. in an emergency situation. And through Heather Tiernan, who manages the program with Contra Costa County, again, we have a great communication flow with them to ensure that, again, the reach is as broad as possible when we need to get the information out there. We have the wireless emergency alerts, which is those text message alerts that go directly to your phone. Easiest way to relate that is the Amber Alerts that you receive. Every phone that's been sold over the last 5 or 6 years has been enabled with this platform. You can turn it off, but I would highly recommend that's always on, just because at 2 in the morning, you will not be able to sleep through that emergency alert. It will wake you up and stir you awake immediately, and it'll be the information that you need to get. And then, of course, we always have the backup, the fail-safe program, which is our AM 1610 broadcast. We have an emergency highway advisory radio channel in San Ramon, which is 1610, where we can go in and we can broadcast emergency information to the San Ramon community. If we get in that worst case scenario where cell phones are down, internet's down, we still have that where people can go to their car, turn on a transistor radio, whatever it may be, and get that emergency broadcast information. So those are the platforms that we use to try and get the information out as quickly as possible. If anyone wants this information down the road, we also have a crisis communication page on the police department's webpage. It's in the quick link section. You can go there and all of this information is there. You do a Google search for San Ramon Police Crisis Communication. It should be the first thing that pops up. And that's an easy link for you to jump over and see all this information. But I think what's important when we talk about emergency preparedness, communication, and everything that we've touched on today is we want to make sure that people are ready. And we talked about it used to be 72 hours that you wanted to be ready to have this be self-sustaining, but we're switching to more along the lines of 7 to 10 days. Make sure you have water in place. Make sure you have food so you can take care of yourself for that long duration. Also, remember your pets. That's an important part. And I know in the Deer Ridge fires that we had recently as part of the SCU complex, one of the things was animals, and Contra Costa County did a fantastic job coordinating with local programs to ensure the animals that needed to be taken care of during that incident were taken care of. But it's something to remember. And, you know, like Danielle said, and Chief Meyer has said before, one of the strongest things we have going in the San Ramon Valley is our partnerships. We have the Citizen Corps Council, which has been a great organization. And I will tell you, one of the downfalls, the biggest downfalls of COVID over the last few months is we haven't been able to have our Citizen Corps Council meetings in person. It's such a great partnership that we have in San Ramon with the county, with Danville, with the school district, and with the fire district, where we are all working together for the same goal of emergency preparedness throughout the whole valley. And I have to say, not being able to see everybody involved in that group in person has been one of the downfalls of COVID, because it is such a great partnership. And it's such a great platform and a group that we have to communicate together to make sure the whole San Ramon Valley is ready. Hopefully we'll never need it. And like Danielle mentioned, it's that insurance policy that you hope you never have to use. But we have the systems and we have the communication platforms in place to ensure the public is notified and the public is informed as quickly as possible when needed. So with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you. And if anyone has any questions, my information is on the crisis communication page on the San Ramon Police Department. They can feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Denton, that was a fantastic summary. In fact, for today's questions, you can always send them to info@sanramon.ca.gov, and Steve will collect those for later on. Next up, I'd like to invite Dr. Joseph, who out of his busy day has every 2 weeks been able to inform us of the newest stuff that's going on with COVID. In fact, I'm intensely interested, Dr. Joseph, what you're hearing about from vaccinations to trends. So welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As always, it's an honor. I always enjoy these, and it makes me so proud of our community. I'm just the unending dedication of Supervisor Andersen. And then today, to hear about fire protection, police services, emergency preparedness. We have so much in our community to be grateful for. And certainly that goes to you as well, Mr. Mayor. So thank you for the invitation, and it's an honor to be here. Steve, if you will help me share the screen, we'll see what we get. Let's see. And hopefully this is the first slide and everyone is seeing it. Just a little bit about COVID today, and then we'll allow time for any other comments. These are the topics that I'm going to address just a little bit, something about wastewater surveillance that has become quite an important thing, a little bit about newer testing and vaccine, and then some science as why do those who have underlying diseases appear to get sicker and have a higher mortality than those who are younger and getting sick. So let's talk first about wastewater testing. The concept here is that virus particles, not necessarily living virus, but virus particles can be recovered from sewage. And it can be recovered from sewage that identifies what is going on in a particular community. I've mentioned this here before, and we just must address the East Bay Municipal Utility District. They have been on the forefront of this for months. As a matter of fact, our own East Bay MUD is coordinating a study with 10 different counties where sampling is done. The samples are being sent to Stanford, and the results of what we're seeing in different communities around our Bay Area, or at least in those 10 counties, should be forthcoming. But a big shout out to East Bay MUD for being very, very much involved with this from the beginning. Now, with the information that they have generated and with some of the science behind it, universities have got into this. And Syracuse developed a protocol. And what you see here is a drain pipe in a dormitory at Syracuse University, where twice weekly, they sample the sewage coming from the dormitory and test it for the presence of coronavirus. This has been adopted by many schools. And one example of how this has worked was the University of Arizona. Last week, or at least on August 28th, for the first time in a particular dormitory, they identified that the sewage was positive for coronavirus. Their response was to test everybody living in that dormitory, and they identified 2 students who were asymptomatic, meaning that they were carrying and shedding coronavirus, but they were not sick. Those 2 individuals were quarantined, and they are convinced, and I agree with them, that by identifying this early, they avoided an outbreak, not only in that dormitory, but also in the surrounding communities. One of the problems that's occurring in colleges that is now quite clear is when there is an outbreak of the student body, it's spreading over into the local townships and communities. So policies like this are extremely effective and represent only one of the many things that science is doing to try to curtail this and identify it early. A little bit about testing. This is really, really important. Quick tests are here and more are coming. On August 26th, the FDA authorized a test called Binax Now. This is an antigen test. It's a very quick test. It takes about 15 minutes. It only costs about $5, and it identifies the coronavirus. It is a nasal swab, and it's the first antigen test to be authorized by the FDA that doesn't require confirmation. In other words, a negative is a negative, a positive is a positive. This is not a PCR test. Those take a lot of resources, a lot of time, long turnaround. This is one that can be done in 15 minutes. Now, I want to comment on that term there that says CLIA waived. This is something that is important to understand. CLIA is the Clinical Laboratory Improvement Amendment. That is the federal government amendments that are designed to make laboratory results reliable. So if someone sends a test to one of my laboratories and we do a test and report it back to the doctor, that test better be good, better be accurate, and can be used for making patient decisions. Now, in my laboratories, we have a lot of very sophisticated and well-educated persons. But there is a concept of tests that are so simple, almost bulletproof, that they can be done anywhere. And an example of that is diabetics checking their own blood sugar by a finger stick. You don't need to go to an accredited or certified laboratory to get a blood sugar. And that's what CLIA waived means. The test is bulletproof. Anybody can do it. And this particular test is the very first one that is waived. In other words, this can be done in doctors' offices, school nurses, pharmacy, on site. And the term that is used is point of care. In other words, where the patient shows up, the test can be done immediately with a result in 15 minutes. This is groundbreaking. This is a game changer. All of us have been looking for this. I have been talking about this. It is now out. When Abbott released this, they even said over here on the right that they're going to have a phone app that connects to your results so that if TSA or other areas, whether it's a college or travel or airlines, require confirmation of your test results, you can show them your test results after having had this test. So Abbott has committed to 150 million tests being available before the end of 2020. And because of the importance of this, the federal government will be determining where they go. Now, this is the first one, and I believe this is appropriate. They will be going to schools, colleges, first responders, any place we need a very rapid, reliable, quick turnaround. But the two important comments are, this is here, it's available, I've used it, it's superb, and more are coming. This is what every research laboratory is doing. So excellent results about sewage testing, excellent results about quick testing. And I have said to all of you so many times, if you can test everybody in 15 minutes, you can solve the problem. If everybody shows up for school and can be tested in 15 minutes and you know who's positive and who's not, that is the game changer. That's the safety factor. And we are here with more coming soon. Extremely exciting news. Now, a vaccine update. There is a lot going on with vaccines. Over in the left, you can see that there are over 150 products being tested in the laboratory and in animal studies. But there are 47 human clinical trials going on now. And I've put the phases up there because I think it's easier to understand with this little cartoon. Phase 1 is the earliest. And there's 24 different companies, 24 different products, 24 different vaccines being tested. Phase 2 is the next step. That is, if phase 1 looks good and it's safe and you know how much to give, then it goes to phase 2, and phase 3 are the large scale trials. 9 of them going on now worldwide. Large scale is 15,000 persons. That's 15,000 individuals getting the vaccine, 15,000 individuals getting a placebo, and you follow them to see what happens. That's where we are now. This is really moving very quickly, and it's important to say that none are yet approved, but we are getting close. I'm not an individual who make a prediction. I also say if you want a prediction, you can turn on YouTube or the news. I'll leave that to others, but I can say this is extremely promising because of the number of companies working on vaccines, the brilliance of the science behind it. Somebody is going to hit the lottery. Somebody's going to make it, just like somebody got the first quick test. This is exciting. So regarding vaccine, because this is coming, because we know that this is likely to work, the CDC, with which I'm very much involved, released a message. And this, I was aware of this message before it came out, but it did get a little bit confusing. So I wanted to state it. The CDC said, that is the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC said to all states, Get ready. Not it's going to happen, but build the infrastructure. Like it was talked earlier about what we did for swine flu, when we were giving vaccines all over the area. The message is out. Get ready, because we may have a vaccine as early as November 1st. If we don't, we're going to have it in December. If we don't, we're going to have it in January. This is the messaging. Build the infrastructure, because when a vaccine becomes available, we want to be prepared to deploy it as quickly as possible. This just represents our experience with COVID. We know what to plan for, very similar to the, very similar to the messaging that was done earlier. Be prepared, and then when the time comes, we can deploy it quickly. So this also is extremely exciting news. And now I'll spend a couple of minutes of questions that I think are prevalent in our community, at least questions that I get. Why the heck do young kids do so good and those with underlying diseases or advanced age do so poor? What's going on? And what you see on the left is a college COVID party. These are parties that are not to be done, but they do occur. Young kids together without distancing, without masking. Large numbers of them do get COVID. There are COVID parties where 70 to 80% of the people that are there will get sick, but they do great. I've shown the figures before. The hospitalization rate is a fraction of a percent. The morbidity, the mortality, the seriousness is a fraction of a percent of those kids on the left. And what's going on the right? This is the same virus, the same disease, the same method of getting it, that is person-to-person spread. And you see an individual there in the intensive care unit requiring mechanical ventilation, ventilator support, vasopressor support, very, very critically ill. So let's talk a little bit about what is the difference between those who don't get sick and those who do. Well, it's our immune system. And very simply stated, our immune system is what keeps us alive throughout our lives. The immune system has a start and a stop. Think of it as a thermostat in your house. If you have your thermostat set to 68 degrees and the temperature goes to 65, your furnace will start. And when it gets to 68, it will stop. It starts, it does its job, it turns on, and it stops. This is good. And what I'm showing here are a very typical viral infection. A viral infection, importantly, because we don't have antibiotics. We rely on our immune system for us to get over viruses. Colds, flu, runny nose, sinusitis, bronchitis, all of those are viruses. Measles, mumps, rubella, all of those are viruses. We don't have antibiotics. So the first thing that happens on the left is that the immune system turns on and it attacks the virus. And that is called an inflammatory response. This is a really, really good thing. Fever, chills, aches, tiredness, feeling terrible, feeling like you got hit by a dump truck. That's a good thing. You don't want to hear me say it, but it's a good thing. It's not the virus that's causing the fever or the chills. It's the immune system that's causing the fever and chills. Proteins are released, chemicals are released, the inflammatory response is turned on, and our inflammatory response goes and kills that virus. That's a good thing. I never treat a fever for someone who has a viral syndrome because the fever is an important part of controlling it. Now, what happens after our innate, inherent, good inflammatory response attacks the virus? And it could be COVID in a younger person. It could be influenza. It could be just a runny nose. When it kills the virus, when it kills the cells in our body that are harboring the virus, it turns off. The inflammatory response turns off just like the furnace turns off. Its job is to ramp up, kill the virus, and shut down. That is a normal, healthy, good immune system. The difference between individuals with underlying disease, individuals with advanced age, is that the brakes go bad. The immune system turns on just like it does in a younger person, a college student, a high school kid, but it doesn't turn off. So the inherent change in the immune system is that it gets started like it's supposed to, starts normally, attacks the virus, but then it keeps going. Even after it kills the virus, we lose the brakes. And that is the reason for the complications of COVID. We don't have a treatment for this. This is a recognized problem, but it's why elderly people, those with cardiac disease, kidney disease, diabetes, lung disease, this is why they get so sick. So you can see what happens. On the left here is a normal chest x-ray. This is what I would see every day. The dark areas are good. The next one is a COVID patient. This is long after the virus is gone. This is the uncontrolled inflammatory response attacking the cells where the virus used to be. The COVID virus used to be here in the lungs. The COVID virus is gone. It takes about 7 days. It's completely disappeared, but the inflammatory response continues. And this has been tagged an uncontrolled immune response, sometimes a malignant immune response, or the term cytokine storm, because the cytokine is the protein that is responsible for the attack of the inflammation. So in the bottom right, you see somebody in the intensive care unit. What happens is that every place the coronavirus goes can be a victim of the uncontrolled inflammatory response. So it's not just the lungs, but it can be the brain. A third of the people who have COVID, it affects the heart. Well, in a young person, when the virus is gone and the inflammatory system shuts off, the heart comes back to normal. In an elderly person where the brakes go bad, where the inflammation doesn't stop, it continues to do heart damage. And that's every major organ: liver, kidneys, spleen, muscles, brain, vascular tree. And that's why we can have a fraction of a percentage of a mortality rate in young kids. But if that same virus goes to grandpa, the mortality rate can be as high as 8 to 10%. 1 out of 10 might die. So that's the underlying science of why we all know that those with advanced disease have a much more serious response. And so I'll wrap it up today with just a couple of comments. What I've nailed as 8 quick COVID thoughts, things you've heard. Let me emphasize. The worst place you want to be is in a room indoors with unfiltered, recirculated air. This is what every school, every college, every shopping mall is considering. Unfiltered, recirculated air is bad. Outdoor is good. The third point, still, most COVID is spread by exhaled air from those who harbor the virus. Surfaces are possible, doorknobs are possible, but it is a fraction of what we are seeing from person to person spread. This is a person to person disease. And masks and double layered cotton protect others from you if you happen to be exhaling the virus. And it's now known that it protects you from others. So wear a doggone mask, cover your face, and you will protect others as well as you. Just a little fact. Recently, last week, we did a study with a bunch of frontline healthcare workers in several communities in the United States. we found that 600 of them had been infected. That's what the antibody positive means. At some time, they had been infected, and 400 of them didn't know it. Now, these are individuals who are educated. These are healthcare workers. They are educated to be very aware of symptoms, emphasizing the very large number of people who get infected, shed virus, but don't know it. Number 6, reinfections are here. I've said at this and many other meetings, so far, we have not identified a person who has been infected twice. That is, infected once, gets better, and gets an infection with a different strain. We now know of at least 4 people around the world, 2 in the United States. This tells us that the immunity may be short-lived. We don't know, but they are here. So once infected does not mean lifelong immunity. It does not mean permanent immunity. As a matter of fact, more likely than not, it's temporary immunity. I want to comment on this last one, and this is not my comment. This comes from Dr. Fauci. We often wonder, why don't people wear masks? Why do college kids have COVID parties? Why are some people compliant? Why are others not? And this is the society we live in. We have chosen to live in an independent society. This is our choice. Unless there is a law, a mandate, or an order, we have the ability to decide what we want to do for ourselves. And in general, mandates and orders are to protect others. And this is just what we have chosen to do. And what we are going through in COVID, whether we like what our neighbors are doing or we don't like it, is exactly what happened in the 1918 flu epidemic. It was the same thing. Some cooperated and some didn't. And then last, Mr. Mayor, is my plug for my field, good science. Good science is self-correcting. And what I mean by that is that I may have told you something in February that represents the best of good science in February. But as new information comes out, we make new recommendations. The fact that in March, it was stated that we do not need universal face coverings. But in May, we learned how valuable it was. So I attempt with everything I do every day to practice good science, realize that what I tell you today represents the best that I can put together, a consensus conference from my colleagues, from people that I have a lot of respect, but it may be self-correcting. We may have to change our mind as more information continues to become available. And with that, sir, I will stop. Thank you very, very much for the time. As I said, I'm very proud to be in this community, and I thank you and thank everyone on the panel.
Dr. Joseph, I think that was one of the best 20 minutes or so I've spent in quite a long time. That was amazing information, some new stuff that, by the way, I don't think anybody has learned elsewhere, at least not in the mainstream media. I wish every American could have watched the last 20 minutes of your presentation, and we'd be better served as a community. The people understood what was going on, understood some of the things that are happening, which are really encouraging, putting in context the virus, but also more important, talking about good behaviors and what we should be doing to help protect others. So Dr. Joseph, thank you. Outstanding stuff.
Thank you, sir.
And at this stage, I'm going to look to Steve. I'm sure there may be a few questions for our guests.
Yep. As always, Mayor, info@sanramon.ca.gov. If you have any questions, we try to consolidate them all so we can get to them. And the first question is for Supervisor Andersen. The state has said that even under the tiered systems, counties may choose to be more restrictive than state guidelines. Does Contra Costa County plan to reopen in line with what is permit under the state categories?
Right now, if our trend numbers continue as they are, we do. And we were, beginning of last week, and when we first heard the announcement of the tier system, we immediately implemented what was allowed, which was, opening the hair salons indoor for indoor service, gyms as well as indoor malls. And so I think as long as our numbers are stable and trending downward, our health officer has indicated we will do what the state allows us to do in each of those tiers. There's a real desire to get back to normal as long as we can safely do it.
Great. Question for Danielle about the CERT program. A couple questions, actually. Do we coordinate with other CERT teams in the area, for instance, Walnut Creek? And also, how do you talk to kids in a disaster, and how much and what do you tell them?
Good
Awesome
questions.
questions. Yes, we do coordinate with our local team. So off to the right, Walnut Creek, all the way to Concord. We have what is called the C8 group, which is the Contra Costa County Citizen Committee for CERT. So it takes into, of course, all the 36 teams actually that we have in Contra Costa County. And we work right alongside with Livermore Pleasanton. And we also have a Bay Area CERT team. So we do collectively work together, and it's a great partnership. On the second question, that has been coming up a lot. Thank you for asking it. I think with kids in disaster, we have to really role model how we're feeling, kind of get in check, reach out to someone as an adult that can be supportive and non-judgmental for you during this time, so that when we talk to our kids, we have a succinct message that we want to give them. We want to validate their emotions of, this is a challenging time, absolutely. And what are the things you're going to take with you? Actually, brings up a good point. On those evacuation maps that Chief shared, we also have the evacuation plans. There was a link as well to right below it on our site of the evacuation, like a kit. So you can blow it up and it kind of shows some of the things you want to take. You know, have that conversation with your kids. What is it that you want to take during this time? And I think if you can come across confident, warm, and knowing that you're going to take care of them, they'll be able to feel validated that things are a little scary right now and we can be prepared. So having those things, I know like one of the things on here is a pillow. In the call center, many of the people who are evacuating were wishing they took their own pillow with them. So they're basic things. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity to talk with our families and not make it a stressful situation, but it can also be fun. Like, what would you take with you? Let's everybody go do what you would take right now and come back to the dinner table type of thing. So we can actually make it a good thing. Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment in that whether you stay in place during a natural disaster or go elsewhere, the better prepared you are as a parent, the better you'll be able to handle the situation, and that will help lower the anxiety of your children. So keep in mind, part of your responsibility of being well prepared is that so you react well and your children can mirror your behavior, because if you're not prepared and you begin to freak out, you're going to scare your children. So you have a duty as a parent to be ready for this.
Well, and I want to add one thing. I sit on the Citizens Court Council with Bill, but one of the best ideas that was given to me is not only do you have your 72-hour kit ready for evacuation, but you have a list of what else you would take in an emergency if you had 5 minutes, 10-minute notice you had to evacuate. Because when that happens, your adrenaline kicks in, you might panic. You might, walk out with your favorite teapot, but forget the family heirlooms or forget the family documents. Just having that checklist that you make ahead of time of these are the things I need to make sure I'm going to get if I have to evacuate is a really helpful thing to have.
Yeah, we did that, and we have our stuff lined up, and we have orange dots on the critical things. So we get one glance, what are the things that need to come. Stephen.
Great. Another question for the fire district. With the lightning storms happening earlier than California's usual fire season this year, should we now start to prepare for wildfires each year? Is this the new norm?
I'll take that. As we always say, preparation is the most important thing. And I think what we've seen now is we've seen kind of something very unusual for several years now. I remember the first year, 3 or 4 years ago, we had a joke we used to say when it was a wet winter, was going to be a tough fire season. When it was a dry winter, it was going to be a tough fire season. And now I never would get too high or low over the last several years, or previous to the last probably 3 or 4 years. But I have to say, if I'm erring on the side of safety, you have to look at this as the new norm. I mean, weather patterns have changed. I don't know that we'll see lightning like this. I mean, but I said that about fires previously. But the reality of it is, until we get PG&E in line and maintenance done correctly, we've got a lot of problems. So I believe it is somewhat the new norm. I hope that we don't have I hope we have down years, but I hope when we have down years, and that in a good way, I mean that in a good way, that people don't get complacent. Always take it very seriously. And we do believe that in California, at least, this is maybe not the new norm, but it's something to be expected.
Great. Or hopefully not great, you know, not that this is.
No, I know it's hard. It's exactly, yes.
So for Dr. Joseph, when would you recommend having a seasonal flu shot?
This is really a challenging question because seasonal flu in the East Coast starts earlier than seasonal flu in the West Coast. Our peak season in California is typically December, but then more importantly, January, February, March. In the East Coast, it's typically 3 months prior to that. Yet the timing of flu shots comes out nationally. So last year, for the first time at the CDC, we were able to stagger the recommendations. So I'm sorry about the long-winded prelude, but for Californians, October is a great time. 10 years ago, I used to give flu shots on Halloween. And then we had difficulties where it was a global recommendation that you had to have them before September 1st. And it was problematic. And I should say that the problem is that flu shot immunity is short-lived. So we know that the average duration of the immune response to a flu shot is 120 to 150 days. So the quick answer to your question is we're now back to where we were a decade ago. Flu shots mid to late October, unless we hear of a rapid flu season. But if we get what we normally get, mid to late October.
Great. And Dr. Joseph, on the next question, I know you've addressed this partially or actually fully on other broadcasts, but are there any new treatment options available on the horizon? Are there any promising procedures that have a good outlook for treating COVID?
Many promising treatments for the most seriously ill. It may be unnecessary to mention the exact drugs, but in line of what I said before, that if we consider that the people who are dying, the people who are in the intensive care unit, and those who are on breathing machines are due to an uncontrolled immune response, the mainstay of therapy now are drugs to turn that off. So they are drugs that block the immune response, and they're very promising. Nothing for the outpatient, nothing for the individual with less severe illness is on the forefront.
Okay, we have a time for a couple more, and they're both for Dr. Joseph. There are several vaccine trials underway in the Bay Area. What questions should residents ask when considering whether to join a vaccine trial?
There should be no questions left to ask. So in a clinical vaccine trial, everything should be explained up front. To do these, the patient has to sign what is known as a patient's Bill of Rights. And it's 10 points that explains, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if I'm going to have side effects. Previous studies have suggested it's safe, but what we're doing right now is an attempt to prove that it's safe. So I don't think there's any questions left to ask. It's really down to an individual's preference. Do I want to try something and take a chance that I'm going to get early immunity earlier than others, or do I want to wait? but there should be no questions left that an individual has to think of.
Great. And the final question was related to the new test that you outlined in your presentation. What kind of nasal swab is it? Is it the one that has to go way up in there, or is it kind of more of a surface nasal swab?
Almost everybody, we were the long one that we did 3 to 4 months ago has been called the brain biopsy.
Yeah.
It's where you take a pencil and you jam it in your nose as far as you can. Those are pretty much gone. We're now using mid-turbinate. So it goes in about 2.5 inches. The swab has a stop. It's not right in the front of the nose. So not just ringing around the front of the nose, but going in about 2.5 inches, not very uncomfortable at all. That's what that test is using.
Great. Thank you all for this. I want to thank Chief Myers for being here. Danielle Bell for all your work with CERT. Thank you. Captain Carlson, thank you for your work, not just as disaster preparedness, but also as a great law enforcement officer. Thank you, sir. Candace, as always, I look forward to seeing you in 2 more weeks, and I hope you continue to bring us good news that we're moving closer and closer to coming back to normalcy. Dr. Joseph, I just can't thank you enough for that presentation today. I wish every American citizen could see that and understand it. I think we would do better as a society understanding both the science and the progress that's being made. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And Joe, for leading our city, managing stuff. My hand is off to you, sir. You carry the weight of the world sometimes. You do it lightly. And I want to thank you for your leadership, sir. And Steve, thank you for quarterbacking all this and partnering with me to make it work every week. And to all the residents of San Ramon, stay safe and get prepared. Do your homework and make sure that you're ready to handle yourselves for at least 10 days on your own. That would be the goal for all of us. Have a great weekend and a safe Labor Day. Take care.